I would like to talk to you about Limbo RNG and a minor discovery that I've made pertaining to it. So, Limbo uses RNG for a variety of things, mostly used with like ragdoll and somewhat physics, although I'm not exactly 100% sure how it affects physics. The most significant one that I can think of is eye blinking, because his eye blinks are random, but like the effects from saws. I mean, I did a whole video where I went through having removed the RNG, and the game even crashed in a place because it needed RNG to determine how far along Limbo would traipse along the ground when getting thrown across it, right? Okay. So you'd think then that this proliferation of RNG would extend to the menu, right? So this is probably calling RNG in some sort of way, because there's the bugs that are randomly being affected, and then there's the rain. Surely the rain is not a repeating texture. It kind of looks like it is, but it probably isn't. There's some variation there. There's the flicker. The flicker's got to be random in some sort of way. If they are, they don't touch the same sort of RNG that is used in the main game. And here is how I can prove it. In the last chapter, you can press a series of inputs down and right, which will cause something random to happen, but only really one random event, okay? And so he does jump, jump, and then he hits the electric, and he goes bzzz, right? And so he died, right? Boof, right? But then, like a second later when he comes off of it, there's a second shock, and his body stiffens up. And I believe that's random. The forces that are attached to that are random in sort of way. So those are calling the RNG. So I can demonstrate that, but I can also predict what the body effect from each of the next 5 times that he dies will look like. So you'll see. Okay, so he's going to go jump, 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 and then he's going to hit the electric, and then he's going to hit his head, and he's going to do a quick flip. So he's going to go womp, womp, right? Okay. The second time, he's going to do a little bit of an arm windmill and fall forward. Okay, so he's going to hit it. He hits the ground, and then he does a bit of an arm wind, and he falls forward. For the third one, he barely makes the full flip, so he's going to go, right? And then while it's fading out, he'll make it over, like that. For the fourth one, he doesn't even manage to make a flip. He's just going to fall flat on his face, like this. Womp, okay? And for the fifth one, it's going to look approximately like the first one, where he does a flip, and it's the same flip, right? The full flip, okay. How am I able to do that? As it turns out, the main menu, if it's calling any sort of RNG, isn't calling the same RNG that this is calling, because this happens every single time. If you were to do this, if you were to start up your game and you were about to dick around in the menu, and then you hold down and right, you're going to get these same 5 effects from the ragdoll, okay? Which means that the RNG is not only the same every time you start, so it's not based on like the date or the time that you start the game at. It's like 0. I think I looked in the code and it's like 0 or 1. So the RNG starts with 0. It always starts with 0 or 1, right? Is basically what that means. And then it picks a different number, but it'll always be that same different number, right? So the RNG is seeded in the exact same way. And the RNG isn't constantly called either, or at least if it is, the way that my game is loading each level transition is extremely consistent, which is possible, but I don't think it's frame boundary consistent. So that means that this game, it fits the sort of perfect situation, that's a great pause frame, to be low RNG calling. So there's only a couple of events where the RNG is called. And assuming that you do inputs very particularly and very correctly to only have these events happen at particular times or in particular orders, you should be able to manipulate it. Now, whether I can actually give a demonstration for that, I don't know. This is all me conjecturing at 2 in the morning. But the best way that I can probably think of to demonstrate that the RNG is saved in the game is by picking a different part of the game where the RNG is called and then coming back to this chapter and being unable to predict it, right? Because if that's the case, then that means that RNG is persisted through the game, and so you could go to that last chapter, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 resets, and then get a particular seed that you might want to do something else. Whether this is useful, I don't know. But here, let's do that quick test right now. So a place that I know that the RNG is most definitely called in a way, which this is going to take forever. I'm sorry. I wish I was better prepared for this, but I'm tired and I want to get through this. Is this, which I bet you I'm going to fail because I haven't done this in so long. The one way that I know to guarantee to call RNG is to fall through the area after this. It's so significant and important that the RNG is the way that it is that it actually crashes the game if you remove RNG. I did a stream a couple of years ago where I used Cheat Engine to make the game no longer random. And that was one of the sticking points for the game, is that this point right here where it falls through, it does a bunch of randomness to determine how long he should fall for, or what position he falls from, okay? Now that we've called RNG, if I load this, I should get a different effect if I hold down and right here. So let's see it happen. Shocks, stiffens, completely different effect. Completely different effect. One that we've never seen before, which means that this calls a different amount of RNG calls as the one previously did, which makes sense. So that's exciting. What that basically means that is, in theory, after like you get that shock, you should be able to like leave and use that amount of RNG calls to get a predictive value or something like that. I'm just too stupid right now to think of like a potential use case for this, but there you go. At some point I'm going to At some point I'm going to explore the RNG in more depth using Ghidra, but it's been difficult maneuvering it for now. But we'll see. At some point, I'm going to figure out whether the RNG can be used in any meaningful way, and if so, how you would manipulate it. Here's my 7.5 minute TED talk on that.